Right, ladies and gentlemen, this is a story about Pulsed Electro-Magnetic Field Therapy. I got into this a couple of years ago from a friend of mine called Jeanette, and I'll read it off the slides. Pulsed Electro-Magnetic Field Therapy, PEMF, taught by Ron Jones, 2 Echo 0 FBT, or fried bacon and tomato for some. 2023. This is the story of how I discovered Pulsed Electro-Magnetic Field Therapy, PEMF, and how I built a machine to use it. What is Pulsed Electro-Magnetic Field PEMF therapy? I've got a website at the top of the page, and I'll read below. How does Pulsed Electro-Magnetic Field Therapy work? Pulsed Electro-Magnetic Field Therapy. Magnetic pulses are created by passing an electric current through a number of copper coils. The patient normally lies in close proximity to the coils. The frequency at which the current is sent is controlled by some electronics. The set of frequencies are chosen for the therapy required. PEMF can pass through all muscle, tissue, tendons, ligaments and bone to help with well-being and regeneration. The body is made up of numerous cells, all of which need energy to function. Energy is dynamic and has frequency, which changes all the time. All energy is electromagnetic by nature, and all cells produce their own electromagnetic fields. This means that nothing in the body happens without an electromagnetic exchange. Trillions of cells are communicating via electromagnetic frequencies. Damaged cells will not have their correct electromagnetic field, and their metabolic process will be impaired. PEMF helps to restore the cell's electromagnetic fields and their metabolic processes. The PEMF therapy uses magnetic pulses it creates to induce tiny electrical signals that stimulate the cell to repair, enabling the cells to naturally generate energy and allowing them to heal themselves. PEMF also has an effect on the cell's membrane channels. These control what enters and leaves the cell. It opens up these channels, allowing more nutrients into the cell and waste products out, helping to restore cells' optimum balance. If enough cells are restored, then they will work together more efficiently. Cells of the same type form together to make tissues, and these tissues make up muscles, joints and organs, so by restoring or maintaining cell function. System function will also be restored by allowing the body to function better. PEMF therapy is used to reduce pain, inflammation and stress on the body, improve circulation, blood and tissue oxygenation, stress, blood pressure, nutrient uptake, cellular detoxification and regeneration. Balance the immune system, accelerate repair of bone and soft tissue and relax muscles. Now this is a prototype of mine that I use every night that you'll see on the screen. I use a coil and an iPod Touch with frequency sets for the relief of pain, arthritis and other ailments, on which I use on a nightly basis. I can alter this, the playlist and the frequencies to whatever I want. Research on PEMF therapy. When in lockdown due to COVID-19, which started on the 23rd of March 2020, one evening, while talking to a good friend, Jeanette, she mentioned that I might be interested in PEMF. I scribbled it on a scrap of paper and said that I would Google it after the conversation. Jeanette had meant PEMF in the context of electron microscopes. I, being wrong, took PEMF and ran it in a completely different direction. Just like me, isn't it? Just like me. So I began looking into PEMF on the internet and found out that you could use it as therapy to help relieve a wide range of medical ailments and conditions. I spent 3 to 4 hours every day on the internet, sometimes from 11 p.m. to 3 a.m. in the morning, when I found it easier to concentrate. This went on for much of the first lockdown. The next 2 slides are a suggestion of some sites that are out there. There's loads of stuff out there, and I just happened to pick 2. This one's quite an interesting one. It's grown a lot since I first looked at it. There was only a few bits on it, and now there's that much stuff you can't find your way around it. A website that gave me a lot of inspiration, DIYPMF.com. From that site you can create custom frequency sets as well. It's brilliant. And this is another site that's quite interesting. A YouTube channel that gave me some inspiration, Spooky Too Long. There's a lot of stuff on here, and he sells a lot of stuff. He's got 2 companies. I believe he's South African, and some of the stuff is quite inspiring. I'd like to do some of the top-notch stuff that he does as a DIY. Now, this is an introduction to human frequencies. We'll learn about this in a minute. One of the most commonly used frequencies for PEMF therapy are the Schumann frequencies. This global electromagnetic resonance phenomenon is named after the physicist Wilfried Otto Schumann, who predicted it mathematically in 1952. Schumann resonances form the principal background in part of the electromagnetic spectrum from 3 Hz to 60 Hz. Information from wikipedia.org, Matt Gorman, DR, and Rust, WD. Schumann resonance are a set of spectrum peaks in the extremely low frequency, ELF, portion of the Earth's electromagnetic field spectrum. Schumann resonances are global electromagnetic resonances generated and excited by lightning discharges in the cavity formed by the Earth's surface and the ionosphere. This makes the Earth ring like a bell. This is due to the lightning bouncing around the surface of the Earth and the ionosphere at the extremely low frequencies of around 7.83 Hz, 14.3 Hz, and 20.3 Hz, according to Wikipedia. Now, I've looked up this again, and there could be some not truth in this. They're not really sure why the Earth does it, if you look it up now. Now, this is taken off Wikipedia as well, and it shows you the 3 frequencies, basically 7.83 Hz, 14.13 Hertz and 20.3 Hertz. They're all sort of approximate, if you want to look at that. Next slide. NASA. Now, I've got a website up here. I had to do a little bit more homework because I knew it in my head, or I had to look it up for proof for this talk. Now, this is from this particular website that I looked up for doing this talk. It wasn't until astronauts kept returning home ill and exhausted that NASA began to research these magnetic fields and their effects. Researching for many years led to the discovery that the lack of proximity to the Earth's magnetic field was making long-term astronauts ill and drained of their energy. This actually comes from the fact that it wasn't just NASA that researched it, it was actually the Russians did it first. And NASA found out what the Russians were doing. That's the bit that's not on here. I've got another website, and then it says NASA actually used PEMF therapy in their space capsules to ensure astronauts are in good health. They found out what the Russians were doing and looked into it. During my research, I also found a lot of commercial available equipment. These only use Schumann frequencies, and some of the claims they make seem rather extraordinary. I believe that a mix of frequencies will give better results, from practice as well on myself. The next slide shows a website called Electro-Herbalism.com. This is where I found the frequencies that I personally use. I'm not claiming to cure all ills with this method. It's just that I feel a lot better using it. And this is this Electro-Herbalism website. It's quite good. It's a collection of all ailments from A to Z. There's 30 odd pages. If you want to go and have a look, you can do. And it's quite nice because you can actually copy it and paste it into software to create these frequency sets that I'll mention in a bit. A lot of research led me to this website, which I thought was most suitable for my PEMF frequency list. There are lots of frequencies on the internet, but I chose this one. Building my own machine. So with all this information, I thought it would be a good idea to put it to the test and build my own version of a machine to use these frequencies. I had a friend who thought might benefit from such a machine to manage pain from arthritis. I also added some Schumann frequencies for well-being. I phoned this friend to say that I had been researching PEMF and thought it might help with her conditions. And would she like me to build her a PEMF machine? She said yes, and this led to what follows. Building my own machine continued. Having decided I would build a machine, I then needed to build the coils and figure out how to build a machine that would be suited, that would be usable. I thought that winding the coils would be the hard bit of the build, as I believed at this stage the electronics would be a piece of cake, and how wrong I was. The next slide is from a Polish website where I gained a lot of information about how to build coils, etc. Now this is a fellow called Chris. He's Polish. He did have 2 websites, but up until last year they've unfortunately disappeared. But there's a lot of information still on GitHub, but I've still got a bit of paperwork that I actually printed out. So the Polish website that disappeared, but most of the information is on github.com. It's biotronics.eu and Biotronica PO. This website was for either European or Polish speaking. Chris is where I got a lot of the ideas for the coil winder, the ease of making the coils, along with the gauge of the wire and the number of turns to be used. I also used his idea for using 2 yoga mats to sandwich of the coils, to make a sandwich of the coils. Coil winding machine. I built a coil winding machine from this Polish website and took inspiration for the mat. Unfortunately, both his Polish and European websites have since disappeared. I only know his name as Chris, as from the previous slide. He was using Arduino-based microcontroller boards for his designs. I could not understand them at the time. I'm not digitally minded. I'm old school, analog. While I was building the coil winder to his design, I found a problem with the things that he was using to hold the enamel copper wire upright while you wind the coil. I didn't know what they were. I couldn't find any reference about them, what he had used. I looked on the internet, couldn't find anything like it, although they seemed familiar. It wasn't until I went to get some nuts and bolts for the coil winder in my local shop in Ulverston. He sells all sorts of things. That I spotted these strange things were in the picture of the coil winder. They were pot rivets. Problem solved. I spent a month trying to find out what they was, and I couldn't figure them out. And this is where I got. This is actually my coil winder that I built, which is based on the Polish gentleman Chris. And this is a picture of the one. Some of you might realise there's a post office counter in the corner there. I've got a reed switch and a magnet, and I can wind and count how many turns that I have. So that was the inspiration from Chris, the Polish guy, which, yes. And this is one of the coils on the coil winder, including these famous pot rivets. I knew they were familiar, but couldn't think what they was. So that's one of the coils. It's got some cable ties partly on. It's sort of been ready to be put the tails on it. 2 coils ready to have red and black wire tails attached, for wiring together to make the mat. There's a sample of a couple I happened to take photographs of. So now this is a picture from the Chris, the Biotronics EU, which I happen to still have on paper, so I happen to scan it. Now this is his showing his coils. The head end where you've got one for the head, one for the neck, the middle bit for your body, and the other bits for your legs and feet. And yes, very inspiring. So this is a picture from Biotronics EU. This is a picture from the Polish website, which I used to redesign my own yoga mat. I added extra 6 coils to the original design. The reason behind this was because I needed to carefully fold the yoga mat into 4, so it wouldn't damage the coils while being transported to the customer. It was folded into a W shape, like you'll see on the slide, where I wasn't sure that with his design whether I could. So I thought I'd actually added 2, but my friend Jeanette told me, "You've added 6, Ron. You've done it again." Now, somebody may recognise their own handiwork here. I sent Steph some details, and he beautifully drew this up with the zones, the coils, and the number of turns. It's a lovely drawing, Steph. Thank you very much. Now this is outside the front bungalow at Alveston. Nice sunny day, beautiful day, and the process of making the PEMF yoga mat with coils. The left-hand picture has the coils wired ready for the spray contact glue. It's a beautiful day, and I thought it would all go perfect, but it didn't. The right-hand picture is covered with greaseproof paper, waiting for the top mat to be fitted. Unfortunately, it didn't stick properly because of the texture and the finish of the yoga mat surface. It was wobbly and it was smooth. The idea of a yoga mat is so you can wipe them clean afterwards, and the glue for some reason didn't stick no matter whatever you did. So, yoga mat with coils fitted and wired, complete with pink cotton cover. Now the left picture is the yoga mat with the coils in. It's all wired up. It's laying flat on the hall where I used to live. And the right hand picture, the finished PEMF mat on the right, has a pink cotton cover sewn on. This was kindly made by my good friend Jeanette. So yeah, she's done a good job of that, really did. Making the mat work. Having built the coils and constructed the mat, I now needed to build the electronic unit to drive the mat. There were a couple of false starts, but it went very much like this. Next, circuit from the internet. I found a circuit diagram from the Mirko Pawlewski website. This is another Polish gentleman that I found, which I built and modified to suit my purpose. It became apparent when testing this circuit there were some shortcomings. I have used several modules. A timer module controlled how long it ran for, a module for reproducing square waves, a Class D amplifier module. These work well. I fed the square wave into a 3.5mm input socket and circuit. However, after connecting the speaker output to the oscilloscope and the frequency meter, it showed there lots of noise on the square wave. This was due to poor filtering of the Class D amplifier module, which I think some will probably realise from that. The next slide is from Mirko Pawlewski website. This is what I based my first design on. This is a copy of this circuit which this gentleman did. I altered it, and I had as you'll see on the next slide, I had it drawn by my good friend Steph. Unfortunately, on this slide there's no level controls on this slide, which there is on the Mirko Pawlewski's picture, as you'll see. Circuit using a timer module and a pulse width modulator frequency module and a Class D amplifier. As you'll probably see, hopefully looking at this, it's got 9 volts DC input in the middle. I used a computer laptop power supply to feed it. I also altered and got a 3.5mm socket so that I could feed the output of a headphone socket of a iPod Touch into it with frequencies. I also changed it and got 2 sockets on the front. The same type you have on the radios, you know, the microphone aircraft sockets. I use that. That's an idea of the first Polish man that I copied. Everybody happy with that? The false start. The previous slide shows a circuit that I modified from Mirko Pawlewski's circuit. The modification that I made was to add a socket for an MP3 player, iPod Touch. I also added 2 sockets for connecting the yoga mat setup. I also added a switch to link out the timer module to have the frequency module on all the time. The next two slides is from the Mirko Pulsed website. It is a picture of the machine that he built to his circuit. It appears he had made some changes to this machine as there are parts extra not on the original circuit diagram. These are the intensity controls. And this is a picture of his machine which I was trying to emulate. Picture from the internet which I used for my first circuit. This you can look it up if you wish to. I'm picky because having worked for an aero engine manufacturer in Derby in the instrument department as an instrument mechanic, I was involved in building, testing and calibrating electronics that were used to test aero engines on the test beds, etc., etc. I knew I was capable of designing and building a circuit that would work. Then testing it to the same standards that I'd been used to where I once worked. This meant I was picky about the failures of the previous circuit. This led me to abandon Mirko Pulsed circuit and put together a circuit of my own design, a working circuit. Part of the circuit that I used for the second design. I wanted my circuit to be simple, basic, reliable, as the end product will be given away. I pieced it together, and you'll see on the next slides, I pieced it together from the output stage of the MOSFET, which was driven by two driver transistors, which was the base of my circuit. I've also got a textbook dated 1977, which my late wife bought me from a charity shop. Practical Introduction to Electronic Circuits, second edition, by Martin Hartley Jones. No relation. This was the source for the rest of my circuit, which I built a stage at a time on a prototyping 400-point PCB solderless board. As each stage was built, it was tested, and when working well, I then added the next stage. Now this was the circuit which I copied part of it off. You'll see on the right there's a MOSFET, and before that there's a couple of driver transistors, and I basically sort of copied that bit. But I didn't like the idea of him using the IC, which is 555, because I needed to be accurate on what frequencies I was doing. I need to be specific. So this is a circuit that I used. It used a 5.5 timer integrated circuit on the internet. This information was used for my second circuit. Now I've had this drawn up by a friend of mine, Mike. He's done it. This is the final circuit. There's one or two issues that could be altered, like on the input there's two 10 ohm resistors. They should have been a bit higher than that, but never mind. This was a working circuit, and the SKU 200382, that's the pulse width module that was used on the earlier circuit. I'd sort of borrowed that idea, so hope you can see all that well. And there's a switch on it that's external for up and pulse width modulated for the low. So you can switch it. You can either set the module to a set frequency, like 174 Hertz for pain, and leave it set at that, or you can switch it to external and feed it with an iPod Touch, and you can do whatever you like with frequencies for elements. So yeah. breadboard to final build. The circuit has two inputs which are switched, one from the pulse width module, frequency module, and the other which is fed from an iPod Touch music player. It feeds square waves in the beginning part of the circuit. The circuit worked very well and was very stable, being fed with square waves at various audio frequencies. This was set up on a pegboard before the final build. This is a picture of the 400-point pegboard that I used, and it was quite good fun playing with that because you could build it a stage at a time and work your way through. I basically used circuits out of the textbook. So this is the second circuit that I tried, built on 400-point solderless PCB breadboard. Hope you can all look at that. Looks quite a good picture actually. I also found some other pictures. This is the circuit under test. It's the left-hand side's got the pulse width modulated frequency output that puts a square wave. It's set at 7 Hz, and I'm looking at it on my oscilloscope, which is the right picture. It's a beautiful, clean, square signal, unlike the other one that was very noisy. And I believe if you look at it, it's slightly, very fractionally above 7 Hz, very slightly, but it's nitpicking neither here nor there. So I was quite chuffed with that, really chuffed. So the trouble I caused myself, as I started to build the circuit, I decided to make it work better by the addition of a circuit that I will call the pink circuit. I added the pink circuit and the square wave on the output became unstable, which defeated the object of the circuit. I continued to attempt modifications to the pink circuit until one night. Now what I'd done, I'd actually got, as you'll see later, I'd actually got a marker pen and I'd marked this particular extra bit in, and that's why it got termed the pink circuit. So now this is same circuit as the last one you saw, and it's been drawn by my good friend Mike here. I've got him to outline so you can see it better. I added an extra transistor and a level control, and it just made it totally horrible. So a phone call one night with my good friend Jeanette. During a phone call with my friend Jeanette one night, we discussed the pink circuit, pink part of the circuit that I had added, and although it was supposed to improve the square waves at low volume levels, it was not doing so. In fact, it was causing the output to become unstable. It was just triggering all over the place. She found it funny that my extra pink circuit didn't improve things, and asked why, when I had a circuit that worked, why I felt I needed to improve on something that worked. She said, just build it as I designed it, without changes or upgrades. In other words, she said, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Yeah. She was quite true on that. Although she doesn't know anything about electronics, she was following what I was doing because I was talking to her quite a lot. So I ended up building it as I'd originally designed it, even though Jeanette still teases me about the pink part of the circuit called improvement. She still has fun with me now because she's helped me with this as well. Now, the 400-point board that you buy, that you can plug the bits in, you can buy these printed circuit boards. It's a copy of it. So basically, you just transfer it from pluggable board into this. Now, I have got at home the one that I transferred stuff to, and that one's had the pink circuit ripped in and out, I don't know how many times, and all sorts. It's a mess. Now, this is the actual board that went to the customer, and that's why it looks quite tidy and nice, if you want to have a look at it. So this is partly in construction, this is part of the build of the final circuit. So now, as I was wiring it, I've got a front panel and I've built it all up and wired it and everything. This is some of the pictures I've got of the final build you can look at. I'm quite pleased with some of these pictures, because in case I need to build something again, I've got something to go back on, because I can't look at the original design without giving it away. This is another shot of the final build on the front panel, the wiring. I even use, as you'll notice, yellow nail varnish to lock the bits down to stop them moving, and everything's all cable tied down and everything, so I'm quite chuffed with this. This is another view looking in a different direction of the final build. I'm quite chuffed with it, that it all went very well. This is a front panel I did. I had quite a bit of fun with this, trying to lay it out, and I used a self-adhesive label that you can print on with your printer, and I used loads of paper and loads of this stuff, trying to get it to the size you want from the computer to fit it perfectly. In hindsight now, I would remove the Dr. Royal Rife, because if you go on the internet and look up Dr. Royal Rife, he uses a slightly different system. He uses one that uses RF frequencies and sidebands and stuff like that. So there's a bit of a funny, it got called Rumble 2, and you can put a lead for the input on the left for your MP3 player, and you've got a fuse, power supply that's a computer power supply, 19 volt laptop power supply. Below the frequency module is a switch. You can switch it for PEMF or MP3 input, and there's a power on-off switch on the right, and there's one of these aircraft type connectors that goes out to the mat, and below that there's below it's a little red LED that flashes every time you get a low frequency. As you go up in frequency, it goes too quick for your eyes. But that's a picture of the front panel of it. So quite chuffed with that. Now this is a photograph of the electronics that I built. On the top corner is the iPod Touch. Below that is a charging lead. Next to that's a 3.5mm extension lead. There's a Velcro tie, you can tie cables up. There's a spare fuse in case it goes, hope it doesn't, and there's a power supply that came from a certain place in Derby that we all love. So that's a picture of that, if that's all right with you all. Creating MP3 frequency sets for the iPod. Some of the time I used a website, DIYPMF.com. That was an earlier site that's got a green heading at the top to create MP3 files for frequency sets. I also used a web page called Merging and Mixing Frequencies to create riff frequency sets. What you do, you can paste off one site and then off the electro-herbalism site, and you can paste them into this DIYPMF.com, and as it goes off, it'll come back with your frequency sets over the internet, which is brilliant. I also used a program called Audacity. You can use that to record stuff as well, and you can produce frequencies with it and all sorts. It's brilliant. You can use that on Windows, Linux or anything, and that produces the MP3 format as well. I then use iTunes to transfer files to the iPod Touch, like you would normally. I know it's not used now, but this is where I need to advance and go on a bit. These were then used to feed from the headphone socket to my circuit. I've had to put this in case you start wanting to fiddle about. Medical warning. Please be aware that I'm not responsible for you using and trying such equipment and experiments. I can only offer you information that I've gained. Anybody wants any information or any information off this, I'm quite willing to pass it on freely. New projects. I've been doing some research into other websites. Unfortunately, the Polish websites disappeared, possibly due to the war in Ukraine. I don't know, they disappeared last year, that Chris fella. I have some information saved on paper, although some information I can still find on a site called github.com. It mentions using Arduino microcontroller boards. When I started this journey, I had no idea about Arduino microcontroller boards. So I'm currently researching going digital. That's going to be a bit difficult for me because I'm always analog. I'm thinking of using an Arduino board with an MP3 board. It's still early days. It could be the future idea. Thanks for listening to the talk and thank you very much. Is there any questions?